What's up, guys? Welcome to a brand new episode of the Fit Women's Weekly podcast. I hope that you're having a fantastic day, and I hope that you enjoy what you hear in this episode. In today's show, there's a couple of things that I want to talk about. Number one, I want to talk about going to failure when you are strength training. Is that something that you should be doing? What are the cons? What are the pros? We're going to break it down. And I actually had found an article, and that's what made me want to talk about this, because I don't know if I've discussed it in past episodes. I probably have. There are over 600 previous episodes, but I know it's been a while. But as I was starting to kind of outline what I wanted to talk about, really put down the specifics of today's chit chat, it then got me into the idea of strength versus building muscle mass. Can we build strength without adding actual muscle mass, and vice versa? And is that really something that you want to do? I don't know. We're going to talk about it. We're going to break it down. But before we jump into our talk, I need your help. I need you to do two things. Whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it on your favorite podcast platform, please make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. And then the second thing that I would really, really love and appreciate is whatever platform it is, reach out to me. If you're watching this on YouTube, comment down below any topics or questions that you have that you would like covered in future episodes, or I can even build little shorts doing like Q&As. If you are listening to this on your platform, feel free to leave it down in the review. Just make sure to leave a 5-star review or reach out to me on social media. It is Kindal Boyle Fitness on Instagram. That's what I'm the most active on, and you can shoot me your questions or your comments there, and I always make sure to get back to everything or everybody that I hear from. So if you drop into my DMs, I will make sure that I make you a priority, and I'll always respond back to you. And I will answer a couple of Q&As at the end that I have received over the past couple of days. I did put up a question box yesterday, and so some of the ones that are fresh in my mind, I will answer those at the end of today's episode. Number one, do you need to go to failure when you are strength training? Is there any benefit in that? And the long or the short of it is that yes and no. If you are purely about performance, you want to make sure that your gains are as gainy as they can be, then yeah, going to failure might have a place when it comes to your fitness. If you're trying to get as big as muscles as possible, then yes, incorporating going to failure at the end of a workout or at like your last set could absolutely help you do that. However, most of us are just trying to get by and live the healthiest life that we can while feeling our best and looking our best. So for most people, no, it's not going to be necessary to go to complete failure. And in fact, for safety issues, which I will share in just a second, it is best that you stay within a set where you're going near failure, where your reps are still looking really good and you're keeping about 3 to 5 reps in the tank. Some studies that I have read said going to where you have 5 to 10 reps left in the tank. I don't think that 5 to 10 rep range is a very good suggestion, because I feel like if you have 10 reps left in your tank, that you are going too light and you are going too easy on yourself. For most of us, that is a little bit too flexible of a guideline. Whereas I feel like if you say 3 to 5, that means that you know those last few reps of your set are going to be like, oh my God, I've really got to push for this. Now, if you do want to go to failure, is that okay? Yes. However, I would not recommend every workout that you do going to failure with every exercise that you do. And I also wouldn't recommend every set that you do going to complete failure, because it takes quite a long time to be able to replenish your energy stores. It takes on average about 3 to 5 minutes for, if you're going to complete failure, for those reserves in your energy and your glycogen and your creatine phosphate to replenish back into your muscles. And so that's going to make really long workouts, but it's also going to put you at risk of those sets looking pretty crappy. And I'm a big believer that I would rather you go with lighter weight and less reps and have really perfect form than trying to rush through it or using improper methods to get those reps where you're using a lot of momentum versus really going through the range of motion for the exercise. So if you are going to go to failure, do it, incorporate it into your training maybe once a week or so, and make it so it's your last set, maybe your last 2 sets, but really your last set is the best bet. And so why would anyone want to go to failure? For one, some people just really like that burn and they really like to see what are they capable of doing. And that's fine. If you're doing it from a performance and you're like, last week I was able to get in 6 reps at this weight, can I get 7 or 8 in this time before I completely give out? And then there is some studies that show if you're trying to maximize your hypertrophy, you're trying to build as much muscle mass as you can, that going to complete failure can help you do that. So a lot of bodybuilders will go to complete failure, and that's fine as well. Just make sure that you're incorporating it in a smart way, that again, you're not going off of complete momentum. You're not breaking down your form. You want all of those reps to go to failure, but where your form still looks really good. And that takes me to the negative side of things, is that there is an increased risk of injury, right? Because as you're going to failure, you're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, can I make this happen? And your form starts to give, maybe your core starts to give out. So then your shoulders are going to fall forward. You're putting risk on your lower back. I will be honest, I have had a major injury one time trying to go to failure. I mean, I've had minor injuries throughout the years. I've been doing this now for 20 years. But when I was trying to go back in age, 24 or 25, I was training for my second figure competition. I did not make it to that competition, spoiler, but I will try to share a picture of, if on YouTube, of my first figure competition that I did. Anyways, I was training for my second one. I was doing seated overhead barbell press work, and I was trying to get that last rep in. I was giving it everything that I had. And all of a sudden, I felt something that did not feel so good. It was just kind of like an instant pop. And I somehow managed to save the weight. I was able to put the bar back on the rack. It was like a seated rack bar, basically. So I was able to get it back into the position. And when I looked in the mirror, some of you guys, this might sound really gross to you, but this is what happened. I looked in the mirror and I could see my humerus, so the top of my arm bone up near my ear. It did not break through my skin, but I completely dislocated my shoulder, but in the opposite way that most people do. Most of the time when you dislocate your shoulder, it drops down. I dislocated my shoulder because of that upward motion, pushed it up, and that was because I was really pushing to go to that full failure. Now, obviously, most people aren't going to go to that extreme, but I am just trying to prove the point that going to failure can increase your risk of injury for sure. Not just when using momentum, but just taking your body to a place that it's not capable of doing and causing some damage. And I don't know, that was not fun to not be able to lift for 6 weeks while that completely healed up. And of course, they always say that if you dislocate your shoulder, you're more at risk for future dislocations. But I've worked really, really hard to make sure that my muscles get really strong, that the tendons and the ligaments around that shoulder are really strong. So knock on wood, that has not been the case. And that was a one-time thing. But it definitely made me more aware of listening to my body when I'm in those really hard lifting sessions. And then the other part of failure that's not always a great thing is that if you are pushing yourself to that level of intensity where you cannot put out another rep, chances are really good that you're going to experience DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, right? Where you wake up the next day and you're like, oh my God, I'm so sore. A little soreness from time to time is fine. It's to be expected, right? Especially if you're trying a new program out, you're lifting heavier weights, you are pushing it a little bit harder, and that's a-okay. I love to be a little bit sore, but when you're going to complete failure, it's going to be really hard not to always be in a constant state of soreness if you're doing that over and over and over again. And if you're really, really sore, you are not going to be able to push to your optimal levels. Or a lot of people will wake up really sore and go, I can't work out. And if they're skipping workouts, that is taking them away from the number one rule of fitness, which is staying consistent with your workout. If you're not able to be consistent because you're so sore, it might be time to reevaluate how hard you're actually working out and to actually bring it down a notch. I'd rather have you work out where you're not going to max failure for 3 to 4 times a week than go to max failure one time and be so sore that you can't work out for 4 days because of that. And then you're never able to get into a consistent routine to actually be able to build the strength and build the muscle that you want to achieve. So just a couple of things. At the end of the day, when it's just us trying to be the healthiest humans we can, we are not going to the Olympics, we're not going to a bodybuilding competition, then no, we don't need to establish a workout routine that incorporates going to full failure. But if, again, that's something that you do want to experiment with, then sprinkling it into your routine, it's fun because you do want to see sometimes, like, what are you capable of doing? Just don't do it every single time. The best answer that personal trainers give that you hear all the time is, it depends. But one of my favorite things to do is to cycle through different types of training. So doing these high rep workouts where you are going to feel fit to pure failure. And then also sometimes working in workouts that you're keeping the reps really, really low. And that's where strength training versus quote unquote muscle building come into play. And I don't know why I decided that these two topics should go really well together, but they should. And so the question now comes, can you gain strength without muscle? And the answer is yes, absolutely. Building strength and building muscle are absolutely two different things. Building strength is primarily focusing on our nervous system, neuromuscular communication, where we're trying to build super efficient muscles for better recruitment to be able to lift super heavy weights. Whereas hypertrophy is what we call muscle building, where we are actually trying to build bigger muscles. And there is a difference between the two. Just because you're lifting heavy and you're getting stronger doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to build more muscle mass, right? If you ever see a power lifter, for example, or maybe you have someone at your gym that's on the smaller side, but yet they're freaking crazy at the weights that they can push and pull and pick up. I've seen people that are smaller than me be able to pick up 300 pounds of a deadlift. Or me, myself, I'm a very small framed person, but some of the things that I'm able to do are much bigger than even men that weigh 50 pounds more than me, right? At certain things. So why is that a thing? And it's because the muscles themselves, the muscle cells, are able to communicate and be more efficient. So how do you build strength? Let's say that that's what you're going after, is pure strength and pure power and not gain muscle mass. Well, that comes from the load that you're doing. So if you're trying to focus on building power, building strength, you want to keep your overall volume on the lower side. You want to keep your rep range within the about 3 to 6 rep range. So that means going very heavy with your weightlifting, okay? But you're going to be doing really small loads. So 3 reps at a time, very heavy, and then you want to keep longer rest periods between so that you're fully recovering. So we're talking 3 to 5 minutes of rest periods between sets. And that might sound kind of crazy, and for some people it is kind of boring, but again, if that's what your goal is, then that's what you're going after. If you're somebody who wants to jump, or you're a power athlete, like a lot of football players, this is the rep zone that they will stay in. If, however, you do want to build more muscle mass, then that's where we want to take the volume up higher. We're going to do more total sets, and we're also going to do bigger sets. So we're talking about anywhere from around the 8 to 15 rep range. However, studies do show, because then it used to be like anything over that was known as muscle endurance. But we now know that as long as we're going near muscle failure, like we talked about before, which is why I wanted to talk about this, if you're taking your muscles near failure, whether you're doing 15 reps, 10 reps, or 50 reps, you are able to build muscle. You are able to add on a little bit of muscle mass. So it really comes down to that near failure load that makes our muscles go, oh my gosh, what are you doing to me? I need to adapt. I need to heal myself, because that's putting a lot of stress and damages the muscle a little bit, so that if I'm in this situation again, I can handle it. And that's where building muscle comes into play. Hypertrophy. We're building bigger muscle fibers. We're not building actually more muscle. What we have is what we have, but we are able to make them thicker. I always like to kind of use the idea of scar tissue, right? Like building on is what we're doing to our muscles. Whereas if we're building pure strength in that lower stage, we're not doing that. We're keeping our muscle fibers the exact same, but we're teaching our muscles how to be more efficient with the load that we're doing. We're making our muscles and our brain talk to each other a little bit better. So on top of having big, heavy loads for strength, we also want to possibly incorporate things like plyometric exercises. That's another really big neuromuscular exercise where our brain's talking to our muscles and we're treating our body like a rubber band. We're pulling those fibers back and then exploding them up, being very powerful with our movements. And that's not the case still with hypertrophy, where we are trying to build that muscle mass and go for heavy sets and burn things out, trying to get as much blood flow to that area. And we'll also be keeping the rest period between our sets on the shorter side when we are going after that hypertrophy as well. So the question becomes, what should you be doing? Well, one, it depends on what your goals are. If you are a power athlete or you want to sprint faster, you want to jump higher, then working in these powerful power moves, keeping our reps on the low side and making sure that those are big exercises, right? Doing 3 reps of a bicep curl isn't going to do too much for creating a big power body, but doing 3 to 5 reps of squats or cleans or deadlifts can absolutely help with building power and overall strength. So another thing to think about. And then if your goal is to build muscle mass, then we want to increase the volume. We want to do more sets. We want to decrease that rest in between. And that's going to help us actually show off what we're working out for. If you want to, build a little bit more definition, get a little bit more toned, that's where you need to be with your training. And I also want to stress that as we get older, and even when you're younger, we want muscle mass, right? Muscle mass is very, very important for our overall joint health, our bone health, and for our metabolic health. So we want to make sure that we are still in that hypertrophy phase from time to time. Keep in mind, if you are a lady, y'all, it is very hard to bulk up. We have to be in a little bit of a calorie surplus to add muscle mass. And even still, we're not going to turn into men. So if you're like, oh, I guess I'm going to start lifting in that 3 to 5 rep range so that I can make sure to get stronger but not add any muscle mass, that's not the best way to look at it either. I think at the end of the day, the best way to look at your strength training is to incorporate multiple different facets of strength training philosophies into what you are doing. So doing some workouts from time to time that are in this powerlifting range, doing exercises and workouts from time to time that are in this hypertrophy range, and going beyond into that endurance phase as well is going to help us to create the healthiest body overall. And that's what we want. We want to be strong, we want to be fit, and we want to look fit and strong. And so I guess going back, I did kind of skip over a little bit that the importance of staying in that muscle building phase as well is we want to make sure that we have muscle so that we have the strongest metabolism that we can, that we have the strongest bones that we can. But also adding in those really heavy lifts where we can only do 3 to 5, that's going to put a lot of pressure on our bones, which is what helps us to build the strongest bones possible. It's going to help with our bone density. So one's not better than the other. It's really important to incorporate both. And that's just how training is in general, right? I've talked so much on here about the importance of cardio and strength training. So now we're just diving a little bit more into the realm of strength training and saying we now have to start incorporating more power movements and more quote unquote hypertrophy movements to create the healthiest, strongest body that we possibly can. Hopefully that makes sense. So if you guys have any questions about that, let me know down below. We have now talked about going to failure, should you be doing it? And we've talked about the power of different types of training, powerlifting versus hypertrophy, AKA bodybuilding. If there's a topic that I need to dive deeper into in the future, let me know. Now, let's see. What were some of the questions that I received in my Q&A? Somebody asked about our cat, Nike. She was super sick in November. I talked about her on the podcast, and they just asked, how's she doing? She's doing so much better. Thank you for asking. In her older age, our cat has suddenly become a lap cat almost. She loves to be held, and that's something that's kind of been new in the past couple months. So people that say that dogs are easier than cats are easier than dogs, I don't know. I'm starting to think that as our cat gets older, that's not the case, but she is so much healthier. The other question that I received is, do I still battle with my exercise addiction? And what were some things that helped me if I am not? To be completely transparent, my exercise addiction and compulsion will always be in the back of my mind. I have talked about that before, actually just recently with the Ellie Turner podcast. And the difference is I'm aware of it, but I don't act on it anymore. And it took a really long time. This is something that I had struggled with for 20 years, where I was exercising multiple times a day, every single day of the week. And I felt like if I skipped a workout, that my body was going to fall apart. I would lose my strength. My body would change overnight, right? And that comes from my A-type personality of like wanting to be in control of everything, right? And I could find that I could be in control of my exercise. But what I started to realize is that my compulsion and my exercise addiction was always heightened at my highest levels of stress, when I had other things going on in my life where I felt like, well, I can't control this, but I can at least control that. So anytime that I start to find myself wanting to dive into a little too much exercise, I always look around and say, what else is going on in my life? What do I need to do to bring myself back to center? I also, just because I have those thoughts, I've now learned, like, just because you have those thoughts doesn't mean you have to act on them. And a lot of times, if I start to have some sort of fear or anxiety, I now acknowledge the fact that those aren't real. Those are emotions. And so if I'm ever fearful of taking time off, I purposely make myself take time off, because I know that it's going to prove to me the world's not going to fall apart. My body's not going to fall apart. Some other little things that I have done along the way is talk to people. I'm very verbal. I talk about it here all the time on the podcast. I talk about it with my clients. I talk to my husband and my friends as well. My husband being my biggest supporter. He's always like, you know what? It's probably time that you take a rest. And I listen to him, because if someone gives me a challenge, I take it on. But on top of that, I also am very intentional with the programming that I do for myself and for Fit Women's Weekly Live. Fitness is my job, so I can't just take time off when I want. So the way that I make sure to work it in is that every 8 weeks we do a training session. And actually right now we're coming to the end of our 8 weeks. And then we take a 1-week deload week where I back off of intensity more for myself than my clients, because most of my clients aren't working out at the volume that I am, right? Even though I have a workout going live every single day for Fit Women's Weekly Live, I don't expect my clients to do that. I treat Fit Women's Weekly Live as if it were a studio down the road, so that on the days that you want to work out, you have a workout there, but there's still stuff going on even when you're not working out, right? There's always classes going on at the studio, but you're only going to go through one class a couple of times per week. But I have to show up. So that deload week is really, really important to me. And so that week I take the intensity down. There's still workouts. I'll still get my blood flowing, but I'm not lifting heavy. There's no purpose to them except to move the body and let my body recover. I also took 6 months off last year from running to let my body recover from a foot injury. But I probably could have started running back sooner. But I wanted to prove to myself that taking 6 months off wasn't going to hurt my fitness. It didn't hurt my body. And it was a really big rude awakening to help me realize that it's okay. The world's not going to fall apart. And my body did just fine during that time as well. So, and then a couple other little things that I've done over the years is not wear my Fitbit as often, so that you don't have that stress of going, oh my gosh, I've only gotten 6,000 steps in. I need to get out and get walking, right? That like craving of like, I have to do this to feel my best. No, you don't. You need to chill is what you need to do. So I actually bought just like a G-Shock watch that I'll wear from time to time. And about once a month, I'll take my Fitbit off completely, just so it's not even there. And I'll just rely on a normal watch. And then on Sundays, I don't even look at my watch at all. If I get 3,000 steps, I get 3,000 steps. It's not a priority. I don't look at my workout intensity or how many workouts I've racked up that day. I just have a complete rest day and there's no stress to it whatsoever. So it's always in the back of my mind, but I am finally at a very healthy place with my exercise. And if that's something that you struggle with, I am so sorry. I do have several other podcasts that I've already done on this, and I am happy to try to link some up. Just comment and let me know, and I'll try to dig some up for you. And I think that's it. I think that's all we have time for today. But again, you guys, ask your questions down below. And if I don't answer it in a podcast episode, I will absolutely answer it in a reel or a short. And feel free to reach out to me. And then last but not least, March 3rd, what are you doing? Because here's what I'm doing. that is actually going to be the time of coming off of my deload. And we are kicking off our Ignite 30 program in Fit Women's Weekly Live. This is a live 30-day challenge, 4 weeks. I have outlined workouts, I've outlined rest days, I have fit quickies, meaning what are small actions that you can do each day to help improve your fitness and accelerate your results. I've outlined weekly nutrition challenges. Again, small things that build up over time to help you, because if you're working out but eating like crap, you're not going to see the results that you want. So this is a complete program, and you have access to me. We're going to have live talks. I will answer every single question that you have and guide you through the entire program. This is an awesome opportunity, but spots are filling up and they are limited. So what you need to do, if you're interested in this, go click on the link. I'll make sure to have it in the description for the Ignite 30. It starts March 30th. Go hold your spot today. I will let you get into the group on that Friday before. So I believe that's February 28th. And so you can get around, play with it. I'll do a coaching class on March 2nd to help outline everything, answer your questions, make sure that you're set so that on the 3rd, we can hit the ground running. You can start getting your workouts done. We can start chit-chatting throughout the group for the entire month. And you get access to the app, which you'll log in each day. It'll knock out your goals for that day. You get to click it, because who doesn't love to be able to check things off? And as you continue to check things off, you're going to build streaks and you're going to get some incredible results, I promise. So go check it out. And if you have questions about that, let me know. All right, guys, thank you so much for hanging with me. Don't forget, subscribe.